Today's video is brought to you by creatives-do-this.com. It was a quiet Friday afternoon in Paris, France, October the 14th, 2022, at a small cafe on Rue Manin in the city's 19th district. A young woman sat alone at a table. Strange though was the fact that she wasn't eating or drinking. She was just sitting. She was calm, still as the city moved around her. A suitcase rested on the seat beside her, and every few minutes, she'd reach down and touch the handle, as if just making sure it was still there. To passers-by, she looked a little out of place. Her clothing was pretty dirty. Her hair was looking tangled. Her eyes were kind of blank. After a while, a man at the next table caught her attention. He leaned over, gesturing towards the suitcase. He joked, "What's in there? You look like you're carrying the world." The woman stared at him. Then, with a small smirk, she said, "Kidneys." The man froze up, confused and scared that he had just made contact with that person that you wish you just left alone. The woman looked away, and for the next few minutes, they both sat there in silence. Hours later, that same suitcase would be found abandoned nearby, next to a building's courtyard. The suitcase was heavy, far too heavy to be the kind of luggage brought over on a plane and then simply lost or stolen. And when a homeless man walked past it, he thought someone must have left it out as trash. And well, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and a suitcase on wheels could be helpful to move his stuff around the city. But as he opened the lid, he saw something no one could ever unsee. Inside was Lola Daviet. This case was not easy for me to research. Honestly, it made me feel pretty sick, but here we go. By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. I bring you rare and unseen true crime cases, as well as other things that you may later regret knowing, with multiple uploads every single week. So if all of that sounds like your kind of thing, then make sure you join the Dark Case family now by hitting subscribe and turning all notifications on. And now for today's silly little question. Do you believe it's possible for somebody to be born evil? Let me know down in the comments. All of your support over on Patreon, as well as right here via channel memberships on YouTube, are so appreciated, and I really can't thank you all enough. However, of course, thank you. And now, on with the video. The day started just like any other. 12-year-old Lola Daviet woke up early for school. She lived in a modest apartment building in northeast Paris with her parents and older brother, Theobald. Her father, Johan, worked as a building's caretaker, and her mother, Delphine, helped manage tenants and repairs. It was a close-knit family, quiet, hard-working, and proud of their little girl. Lola loved gymnastics. She was cheerful, talkative, and always helping her mother and father around the building. She had just turned 12 years old that summer. That Friday, October the 14th, 2022, classes ended a little after 3 p.m, and then Lola said goodbye to her friends and started the short walk home. It was just a few hundred yards, and a path that she took every single day. And thankfully, by 3:20 p.m, she reached the apartment building. CCTV footage even captured her entering through the front doors. But in that same footage, we see a woman following her inside. The woman walks behind Lola, her hands fidgeting, her expression unreadable, and then just moments later, they both disappear down the hallway. Lola then never returned to the family apartment. This video is sponsored by Creatives Do This, a platform that I've helped to launch that features real interviews with real artists, candle makers, musicians and creatives of all kinds who are making it work. Right now, we're looking for creatives to feature. So if you've made money from your creativity, whether it's a full-time career or a new side hustle, and you want to share how you did it, we'd love to hear your story. It's just a short text-based interview and it takes around 10 minutes. And in return, you get free lifetime access to everything that the platform becomes. Plus, your work will get featured to inspire others and to build your brand. Hit the link in the description or the pinned comment to take the quick interview and to become one of the 100 founding members. There's now less than 50 spaces left. www.creativesdothis.com. When she didn't come home as she always did, her father quickly grew anxious. He tried to call her phone but received no answer. He checked the courtyard, the lobby, nothing. By late afternoon, he went back to the CCTV room, which sounds like it was his maintenance office, and there he rewound the footage, and he saw daughter Lola. She was smiling, walking through the front door, and then he saw behind her that strange woman that he didn't think he knew. He called the police immediately. By evening, search teams were combing through the neighborhood. Neighbors joined in, teachers, friends, but to no avail. Then at around 11 p.m., the homeless man spotted the hard plastic-shelled suitcase near the courtyard. Strangely, it had been sealed up with tape, and a white blanket had been draped over it, and that's when he lifted the lid, revealing inside a fragile body, bound, silent and lifeless. Word spread instantly. Residents gathered outside in disbelief. Paris police flooded the scene. When officers checked the tag on the suitcase, it was from the same building, Lola's building, her father's workplace. And on that CCTV, the woman last seen with his daughter had reappeared hours later. This time, she was struggling to drag a heavy suitcase out the door. At first, no one knew who she was. But that night, police traced her steps, and they learned that she didn't just know the building, she had actually lived there. And when they looked closer still, they discovered that she wasn't just some stranger passing through Paris. She was someone that the family had already met. The woman from the footage wasn't just a random passerby. She was Dahbia Benkired, a 24-year-old from Algeria. To most of the tenants, usually she was barely noticeable, a quiet, drifting figure who seemed to just appear and then vanish around the hallways. Some neighbors remembered her hanging around the entrance asking for cigarettes. Others said that she sometimes slept on the benches near the courtyard, muttering to herself in French and Arabic. She had once come to France legally on a student visa, but by 2022, that visa had long expired. In July, she'd been stopped at the airport, and she was told that she had 30 days to leave the country. However, she never did. Instead, she began staying with her older sister, who just so happened to live in the same apartment complex as Lola. And in the weeks before this crime, there had been a rising tension, but nobody could have known just how deep down those tensions were bubbling. Witnesses recalled seeing Dahbia furiously walking around the building, calling Delphine, Lola's mother, heartless. After that, she began showing up more often, pacing, lingering near the mailboxes, waiting. But nobody could have known just how far down she was spiraling. When police searched Dahbia's sister's apartment, this was after Lola's body had been found, what they discovered chilled even the most seasoned officers. Inside the small cluttered flat, investigators found duct tape, a box cutter, and scissors. All of them were marked with red stains. In the sink were traces of tape adhesive. In the bathroom, strands of blonde hair. But at that time, it was Dahbia's behavior after Lola had already met her end that disturbed detectives the most. She had been seen dragging a suitcase, the one containing the body, through the streets of Paris. By the time police caught up to her the next morning, she was calm. She was almost relaxed, and when they asked her about Lola, her answers made no sense at all. Dahbia didn't seem afraid of the police. She didn't ask for a lawyer. She didn't even ask why she was being arrested. And then for nearly 2 days, investigators spoke to her 6 different times. Each time, her story changed. At first, she said she didn't know anything about a missing girl. Then she said that she'd seen a strange man carrying a trunk. Then detectives told her that the CCTV proved otherwise, and she grew irritated. "Maybe I dreamed it," she muttered. "It was all a dream." Hours later, though, she said something different again, that an armed stranger had burst into her sister's apartment, and that he, not her, had done all of this. Then she changed her story again. Now she claimed that she'd been possessed. One detective later said it was like she was spinning a wheel of lies. Each turn landed somewhere worse. But on the 4th interrogation, just before noon on Sunday, something seemed to shift. She leaned forwards, resting her hands on the table. Her eyes, flat and cold, met the detectives. She said quietly, "I killed an angel." Then, almost casually, she began to describe exactly what she did. She spoke of how she lured Lola upstairs, how she'd asked her to take a shower, how she'd found duct tape in her sister's drawers, how she'd wrapped it around Lola's mouth, and then turned on loud music to hide the sounds of crying. She described how she disgustingly violated her. Investigators sat in stunned silence as she detailed every act, detached and emotionless as ever. At one point, when she was shown a photo of the victim, Dahbia just shrugged. "That leaves me indifferent," she said. "I was hurt too. I saw my parents die in front of me." By the end of the confession, detectives weren't sure what was real anymore. Dahbia spoke in half-truths, mixing fantasy with fact constantly. There was also one strange detail that stood out. It actually sounds like something more from a deranged horror movie than anything else. She said that she'd written 2 numbers on the girl's feet, a 1 and a 0. When cross-checked with the autopsy report, this fact was true. The digits were there, drawn in red. Nobody could explain what they meant. Even Dahbia couldn't. She just smiled and said, "You'll never understand." Detectives searched for a motive, anything that could even partially explain the senseless cruelty. This wasn't a robbery. There was no ransom in place, and Lola nor her family had ever wronged Dahbia, or so it seemed. Investigators found a small note in her file from months earlier. It mentioned an argument with one of the caretakers of the building, that being Delphine Daviet, Lola's mother. A few weeks before the crime, Dahbia had stormed into the caretaker's office, and she was demanding an access badge to the building. She told Delphine that she was tired of needing her sister to buzz her in, but Delphine refused, politely but firmly. Rules were rules for a reason. Dahbia wasn't a resident, she wasn't on the lease, so she couldn't have a badge. To Delphine, it was a brief and forgettable encounter, but to Dahbia, it became an obsession. It was after this encounter that residents recalled seeing Dahbia angrily walking around the building. In her phone search history, investigators also found some disturbing queries. Phrases like revenge spell and how to curse someone. One search really stood out: how to make someone pay through their child. Forensic analysts said that it was clear Dahbia had fixated on the family. She felt slighted by the refusal to give her that access badge, and then thoughts of revenge had started boring down in her mind. And so when she saw Lola returning home that Friday afternoon, she felt compelled to act. Psychiatric experts examined her over the following weeks. They found no major illness, no psychosis. However, they all agreed that she did show strong psychopathic traits: manipulative, deceptive, emotionally hollow, leading one expert to say she feels wronged, but she has no empathy for the pain that she causes. When asked why she did it, Dahbia said, "She refused me the key. She thought she could tell me what to do." Those words would make the courtroom shudder months later. It confirmed what everyone feared. This wasn't a spontaneous act of madness. It was a planned vengeance, cold and deliberate. And the two red numbers on Lola's feet, 1 and 0, although it doesn't seem that anyone could decipher them, my theory is that she was saying 1-0. As in, I win, you lose. You shouldn't have refused me that badge. Let me know if you think I'm right down in the comments, or if you have any other thoughts yourself. A long and devastating 3 years passed before the case finally went to trial. By then, the story of Lola had become more than a standalone tragedy for some. It instead had become a symbol and fuel to a fire. For some people, it was about the justice system. For others, it was about France's immigration laws. But for Lola's family, it was just about her. The trial opened on October 17th, 2025 in Paris. Reporters filled the hall. Every major network in France was there. When Dahbia Benkired entered the courtroom, she looked almost unrecognizable. She was calm, tidy, her hair tied back. She showed no emotion, no fear to the process. Her charges were read aloud: SA, torture, murder of someone under 15. The prosecutor called her actions inhuman, the definition of cruelty. He reminded the court that Dahbia had been playing music during the final moments in order to drown out Lola's cries. And then after that, she calmly went out for a drink, whilst the body was still inside the suitcase sat next to her. Across the courtroom, Mother Delphine sat clutching a photograph of her daughter. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. She spoke to the court, also revealing another level of devastation to this story. She said, "This monster destroyed my family. My husband died of grief. My son lost his sister, and I lost everything." The courtroom fell silent. Her husband Johan, once a cheerful caretaker, had spiraled after the murder. He started drinking again. He lost his job and then his health. In February of 2024, he passed away at age just 49. Delphine called it a second death. The husband she knew and loved was gone long before. When it was her turn to speak, Dahbia only said one line: "I ask for forgiveness. What I did is horrible." The judge asked if she understood the charges, and she nodded once. Then she just stared straight ahead once again. Outside the courthouse, crowds had gathered, some holding white flowers for Lola, others holding political banners. Far-right leaders called it a failure of immigration control. They said that the government had let this happen. But Mother Delphine's message was clear: "Don't use my daughter's name for politics. Let her rest." The trial lasted just 6 days. When the final arguments ended, the prosecutor asked for France's harshest punishment, a sentence so rare in the country, it had only ever been given out a handful of times in the nation's history. That is, life imprisonment, with no chance of release. But would she get what she deserved? On October 24th, 2025, the jury returned to their seats. The courtroom was silent. Even the press had stopped whispering. When the judge began to speak, his voice was steady but heavy in content. He called the crime an act of true torture. He spoke of extreme cruelty, of Lola's final minutes spent in terror. Then he said the words that everyone had been waiting for. The court sentences Dahbia Benkired to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. It was the first time in French history that a woman had ever received the nation's harshest possible sentence. Dahbia still didn't react. She didn't even flinch. Her voice stayed blank as the judge read on. But across the aisle, Delphine Daviet wept quietly into her hands. Her son placed a hand on her shoulder. When they left the courthouse, Delphine spoke only once to reporters. "We believed in justice," she said softly, "and we got it, even if it won't bring back our Lola." She thanked the court, she thanked the jurors, as well as the police who never stopped searching for the truth. And then she walked away, a single mother now, carrying the memory of 2 graves. Outside the building where Lola once lived, Candles and flowers filled the courtyard. Neighbours left handwritten notes. You were the sun of our life. You'll be the star of our nights. For most of France, that verdict closed the case. But for those who knew the family, it just couldn't bring them peace. In the years that followed the event, in fact up to present day, politicians continue to argue about immigration laws, visas and deportations. And none of that can undo what's already happened. But who knows, if things are done the right way, maybe it will stop rare cases like this from happening again. Lola crossed paths with a woman consumed by anger aimed at her mother. She suffered the worst fate at the hands of petty revenge. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.